Aron and Iriya laid side by side ashore, drying on the sand and staring into the sky. Sparse clouds were hanging in the way of their view, but it was a pretty scene, showing no signs of rain. Iriya rested her arm on Aron's, and he gently gripped hold of her hand.
"There's no escaping it, is there?" she said, afeared. "How long will it be before it risks heading into the shallows? Before it overcomes its fear of you?"
"You think there's naught to be done?" said the boy. Iriya took a deep breath, then leant her head in to rest against Aron's. He spoke again. "I'll just have to take you away from here."
"Where would we go?"
she dismissed.
"And besides, should you not return home, where your family will be waiting for you?"
"Who says I can't do both at once?"
"Aron," she sighed, "that would be dangerous for the both of us."
"You can hide," he suggested. "No one has to know of it." Iriya was naturally not very fond of his suggestion. However, there wasn't much of an alternative available. The sea had forsaken her, and while she would be glad not to leave Aron's side, the idea of following him to his village felt like resignation to a life mostly out of the water, and far away from anything she knew to be normal. Eventually, she agreed it was a good idea, and the next day they were sailing once again upon the open sea. The girl sat against the railing on the cabin roof, watching as the starry islands grew tiny and distant, until eventually they dipped below the horizon. At that point, Aron carried her below deck and laid her down with a large blanket. There she could hide when the boy came to dock in his hometown. Aron's father sat on the grey stone pier at the edge of the harbour, staring out at the endless ocean. That is how he had spent most of his time since the day of the storm. He was not the sort of man to cry, nor share his emotions much at all, and now he had a heavy, heavy weight upon his shoulders. He barely ate, and was wearing away for the loss of his son. How he longed so deeply to see him again. If only there was something he could do. If only the ocean would simply give him back. When the boat eventually appeared in the distance, he did not react. He refused to give himself false hope, and was convinced that it was some other sailor's vessel. As it drew closer, he thought himself mad, still denying what he saw. And in the end, when he could see the bright, happy face of his son who was waving at him, he jumped for joy, and cried more tears than anyone would ever see from him. He dried his eyes before Aron docked, although that didn't hide anything from his son, who noticed the redness in his eyes. They hugged tightly for a long moment before even a word was exchanged between them. When they broke away, his father finally spoke in utter disbelief. "My son, you came back to me." The boy laughed, as tears welled up in his own eyes. "I'm sorry for keeping you waiting." "That's quite all right, my boy," he said, much more composed this time. "You must have quite the story to tell." "I do," Aron stuttered, "though I fear you won't believe it." "The sea is a strange place, Aron. You forget I've come to know it well." His tone was playful. "And anyway, I can always tell when you're lying to me." The boy laughed. "Then shall we stay out here until I've told the whole tale? It may be that no one else will understand." "Of course, my boy, of course." The two of them sat there for a long time, with their legs hanging over the edge of the pier. Aron's father listened carefully to his son's retelling of events, asking questions for fine details, and especially to satisfy his curiosity about the mermaid. He indeed found it all a bit incredible, but knew in his heart that his son was speaking the truth. "I am sorry, my boy," he said quietly, after Aron presented to him the blue pearl which Iriya had found. "I shouldn't have made you sail in the storm." "It's okay," Aron replied, smiling. His father was not one to recede his words. Him having apologized at all was more than the boy expected. As he continued with his story, Aron eventually judged his father safe to introduce to Iriya, and so, with a lowered voice, he told him the whole truth, including that she was aboard their boat right then and there. His father was noticeably excited at this, for he had never seen a mermaid before, and believed his son on at least this one's good nature. On board, he took a lantern below deck, and when the boy showed him to the girl's hiding place, the two were met.
"I don't believe it,"
exclaimed the father before Aron could even introduce him.
"I mean, I believe it, but seeing is something different, isn't it?"
"Iriya, this is my father," Aron began, although he was interrupted.
"Ethan Diver,"
he proclaimed his name, kneeling down before the creature.
"At your service, fair Iriya."
She replied, confused.
"Indeed. Well met, sir." "Oh, it is well met. I never thought I'd meet one of your kind in such polite circumstances."
He began to think out loud.
"Oh, how so much can change in a day. How wrong we must be about your people. This is just wonderful."
"It is less wonderful for me, sir,"
said the mermaid coldly.
"I can never again return to my home, and upon the land I must still hide."
"Quite right,"
he agreed, calming down his tone.
"I doubt many will be understanding, nor even willing to listen. You were lucky to meet my son out on the water."
Aron smiled broadly, for that was a high compliment. Failing to find a black pearl clearly did not lose him his father's pride. "What are we to do?" he said, hoping his father would have some ideas. He mumbled, scratching at his beard and looking around with distant, glistening eyes.
"There is the little shack by the Serpent's Walkway."
"That doesn't belong to us," Aron argued. "It isn't much more than a pile of rubble." His father smiled, and his excited tone of voice returned.
"Then it's not likely to sell for much now, is it?"
Aron shook his head and smiled along with him. "Do you know who owns it?"
"I can talk to the mayor. He'll know,"
answered his father.
"Meanwhile, if he can find a few more pearls as round and rare as the blue one you showed me, I'm sure you could fetch the funds to haggle for the house."
And so, the boy had his plan for how he and the girl could muster a life together. Iriya begrudgingly did not help with the finding of pearls, for she was rightly afraid of the water, and just as well Aron was afraid for her. But at least when at sea, he could bring her out from her hiding place to sit upon the deck and feel the sun's warmth, while he dived to the reef and back. She longed so deeply to swim again, and soon enough she would have to, lest her idle muscles go weak and limp. Aron took her to the Serpent's Walkway one day, where she swam in the shallows with him. It was a great sea cave several miles from the village, a tall archway in the cliff that narrowed into a tunnel, digging far into the earth. It was named so, for it looks as though a great sea serpent had once bored the hole as means to travel across the land. The rocks surrounding it were sharp and lifeless, save for a few that laid near a large grassy platform a little way up the cliffside. Upon that stood a little hut that had seen better days. That was the prize the two of them sought. "Look," Aron pointed while the two were still aboard the boat. "There it is. It needs some work, mind, but no one will reach you in there." Iriya hesitated, then stuttered.
"Aron, I...
"What is it?"
It's just... you've done so much for me. I can't bear that, in return, I'd force you into a life of seclusion and secrecy."
"Iriya,"
he started, clearly shocked by her words.
"Do I really have to say it?"
She stared at him blankly, not taking his meaning, and so he spoke plainly.
"A life with you alone would be a simple and peaceful one. I would choose that life over any other right now."
"Promise,"
she called out. "I promise," he answered. Iriya smiled. Before long they were in the water together, chasing the little fish of the shallows and daring each other to swim further into the darkness of the Serpent's Walkway. As the weeks turned into months, their fondness for each other only grew, and eventually Aron's whole family were made aware of it. He had told them his story on the night he returned home, although in that retelling he neglected to mention any feelings he harboured for the mermaid, and that she'd in fact returned home along with him. No one else had the skill of his father to detect when the boy was lying. But as the tale naturally arose in the occasional conversation, one by one he told his mother, brother, and sister the whole truth, and introduced them to Iriya. Many days passed, and after a lot of hard work, the little secluded house finally belonged to Aron. After many more days and more hard work, the place was comfortable to live in, and he and Iriya made it their home. The boy remained in or around the house most days, taking care of any and all jobs it demanded of him. Meanwhile, he would take Iriya down to the shore, and she would swim away to hunt for fish and search for pearls. Enough time had passed now since her encounter with the Leviathan that she once again felt somewhat safe in the water. Perhaps the other mermaids thought her to be dead, for the creature that hunted her could not speak to report what really happened. One night, when the candles had all been blown out, and Aron laid in bed beside a sleeping Iriya, he looked up at the ceiling and pondered the words that his father said when he first met her.
You were lucky to meet my son out on the water.
He thought of how unlikely their meeting was, how many factors had to be exactly as they were for it to occur as it did. If his birthday were a few days earlier or later, or if he had already found a black pearl with time to spare, he wouldn't have been there, sailing alone, or even at all, on the day of the storm. He concluded that he shouldn't question such things. Whatever powers lay beyond the sky, they had decided it was simply meant to be. Then he thought of how his mother and father had first met, and how really, many things in life are unlikely when you consider them fully. It's only what you cherish dearly that you consider yourself lucky for. It may seem that Aron had been on a grand, one-of-a-kind adventure, but the fact is, all those who have come to love another each have a mermaid story of their own. The boy made a decision. He rose before dawn and made his way to town, where he set about buying a pair of silver rings from the jewelers. Having left no note, he returned home that afternoon to a nasty glare from poor Iriya, who had been worried about him. Although her anger quickly dissipated when she realized his purpose. Presenting her with the rings, he said,
I know we can never properly wed, but that doesn't mean we can't make promises all the same.
The girl said nothing, but simply smiled and held out a hand to accept her ring, as tears of joy began streaming from her eyes. In that moment, she thought herself lucky, just as the boy had done in the night. But she was very clever, and would in time realize the truth of it, that the chance meeting of those who grow to love is far more alike to destiny than it ever is to luck.